Nate, can you hear me?
All right, we can. All right, let's get started. So, welcome everybody. This is Nate Curran. I'm the Director of Marketing at Tag and eBacon, and we are going to talk about market trends and legislation and regulation coming into 2021. So, thank you everybody for for joining us today and taking some time out. I want to introduce our other panelists today. First is Jason Knight, our Director of Operations, which many of you know and love from many of our past webinars, and Andrea Porter. So she is our Director of Human Resources, and Andrea, I see you're still muted, so you're going to have to unmute yourself there. But she is here to help us, and I'm sure many of you have talked to her in the past. She is our secret weapon when it comes to HR and anything related to employee issues. So thank you guys both for joining today.
Our pleasure. At least my pleasure. I don't know about Andrea.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm such a secret weapon that I'm like stealthy back there. You can't hear me. Good morning, everyone. Nice to be on today.
Great. So let's go through the agenda. As always, as you have questions, please type them into the chat, and we will answer those kind of throughout the presentation. But today's agenda, and this is going to be a little different webinar than maybe what you've expected in the past. What we really try to do here at Tag eBacon is really try to help you sort through information, and then give you some particular advice on what are the things that you can specifically do with that. And while some of the topics that we'll talk about today will lead us to say, hey, here's what's happening and here's how you can handle that. A lot of what we are talking about is also kind of like, hey, these are trends that we are seeing in the business and things that we are watching, not only for what we do, but also for our clients. And we just kind of want to give you a heads up on that. So this one may feel a little bit different than what you have seen in the past, but we're going to try to keep this to about 45 minutes, so that way you can get right back to your day and to some of your end of year activities. But we're going to talk about COVID. We're going to talk about new regulations, what we're seeing as potential trends, both at the federal level and across the nation. And then we're going to go into some specific California legislation. A lot of our client base is there, and it's really, California is always kind of a fun state for new regulations, and so we're going to kind of dive into some of those. And Jason, I mean, when we talk about California, a lot of our, we say a lot of our clients are there, but we also have, quite a few clients outside. But it's kind of interesting. California sometimes leads the way, right?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we've got some of the items from California in here is obviously for the clients that are in California, you're going to be interested. But even if you're not in California right now, keep listening, because whether it's California or another state, although California usually seems to be at the tip of the spear when it comes to legislation, once something starts passing, and especially California, but then other states start to follow, and then lo and behold, you have federal changes. So this is important stuff, even if you're not in California, because it is likely something you might see in your state in the next few years or so.
Cool. All right, well, let's jump into it. So we're talking about the impact of COVID and everything, and obviously everybody's been impacted by that, but we're talking about, really going forward into 2021. And, there's a lot of information out there about, national mask mandates and what is going on with that, as well as kind of the stimulus packages and what's going on with vaccines. And I guess, Jason, I'll start with you again. I mean, some of this is we're not going to know until the new administration comes in. But what have you been hearing as far as some of this stuff is going?
So I'll kind of touch on the stimulus package part of it, and specifically the PPP stuff. And we've been hearing about a PPP2 is kind of the terminology that you'll read out there. So if you've read something about PPP2 or something of that nature, they're all kind of talking about the same thing, but a second wave of PPP being offered, including to those companies that already received the first round of PPP. So it's not like, oh, well, here's a second shot at the apple. It is literally a second apple. And so while we don't have anything definitive yet, and I've actually talked to quite a few clients about this over the last couple of months in particular, we're expecting something. We just don't know what it looks like. We don't know how it's all going to, finish out. Then again, we can still say that about the first PPP half the time, so we don't know what it's going to look like at the end. But there is likely to be something that comes down the road with PPP related or like again. And so that's something that we'll definitely want to be paying attention to. And just like the first time around, obviously we helped you through it. We're going to do what we can to help through it again if and when it does pass. So
yeah, and from a time frames, like I've been trying to keep up with this stuff, and it's like I still don't really know if anything is going to get passed before the beginning of the year.
I don't think so. I was expecting something to probably be passed before the election. I think most of the country, frankly, was for a variety of reasons, right? But since that didn't happen, yeah, I think we're kind of all in that position where now that November's come and gone and we're already, 10 days into December, it is pretty unlikely, I think, before the end of the year. And if that happens, then, like you said earlier, the next administration. So,
yeah. Cool. Andrea, from national mask mandates or vaccines, have you, anything other than kind of what we all heard that there's going to be mass in federal buildings, so there really isn't going to be like a true total national mask mandate. It's more going to be around federal buildings. Have you heard anything else on anything like that?
Yeah, that's the list, is that it's kind of a vague mask plan. He's asking everyone to wear masks for his 100 days in office, talking, requiring them in federal buildings, state travel, planes, trains, and automobiles, and buses. So kind of looking at vaccines. I want to touch on that because that is a question that I've been getting kind of in the last 2 weeks is, once these vaccines become available, which, we all know they just started doing shots in the UK. So that will be coming, can employers? Answer is generally yes. You need to keep in mind it needs to be related and consistent with business. Really, any employer could make that argument. Under OSHA, COVID already kind of falls under the direct standard of kind of, things that you can require for your employees. But you have to keep in mind that there's always going to be the potential for somebody who has either ability or a religious exemption. So employers who have 15 or more employees and are subject, to the ADA and other things under the EEOC, they really need to kind of take a look at that and think about how they want to handle that. They determine if they're going to require them or not. So, for example, healthcare, travel, retail, food service, they're going to be a lot more likely that, hey, we really need this for our employees to, everyone to be vaccinated and required it. It's going to be a lot harder, say, in just a business setting where people are more spread out and not necessarily with, direct contact with the general public or other employees. So, I know that's a question on everyone's mind. So yes, you can do it, but I would encourage you to think about, if you should, if that makes sense for your organization.
So I guess on that question, then like, is that, you know, specifically for our clients, you know, is a lot of that already in kind of their HR handbooks, or is that some kind of an update that they would have to do, or like
No,
how would they make that decision?
Yeah, so I think it's really based on, you know, looking at your business and what's going on with you. Like I said, if you're healthcare, you're probably going to decide that you know, you need to mandate vaccines, and then you're going to handle that, you know, with one-offs with people who come to you and say that they're not going to for one reason or another. Everything with COVID, my general stance is don't make changes to your handbook, hoping this is a temporary situation. You know, it will pass, and you don't want to make changes to your handbook that we're going to change again in 6 months. So, but anytime that you want to implement a policy, you have to put in your handbook, you just need to notify your employees. So, you know, whether it's a specific written COVID prevention plan, like required in California and some other states, update there, or simply a memo or an email to your employees about what's expected.
Awesome. Cool. And again, you know, to everybody who's listening, if you do have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll answer them as they come up. So, but you know, just in the sake of time, we'll kind of move on here and talk about some of the new business regulations that we've kind of seen, both kind of expecting at the national level as well as kind of across the country what happened over this past election. And you know, I really want to start with the PRO Act. We do have quite a few of you know, construction companies and other types of industries that kind of lend themselves to more you know, being more union centric or have the potential to have that. You know, this particular law is, and especially with the new administration and their focus on kind of strengthening the workers' right to organize, you know, this could have a very big, you know, impact kind of across the nation. And it really kind of repeals those right to work laws in the 27 states, you know, including Arizona, that, you know, really, you know, increases the opportunity, I guess, for unions to organize. And then there's, and it really increases and creates more strict labor law violations. And so, Jason, I mean, you and I have kind of talked briefly about this, where, you know, it's almost like a mimic of California's AB5, which, you know, there's still a lot of stuff that's kind of up in the air about that. You know, where should our clients kind of be, you know, what should they be prepared for with something like this?
Well, so, you know, AB5 talks a lot about the, and I know we're going to get into that more, but it talks a lot about the classification of independent contractors, right? And that's the big thing about the ABC test. And we've always had a national, for lack of a better term, test or you know, rules around who is an independent contractor and who's a W-2 employee. And it's kind of been shocked over the years when I hear somebody say, yeah, well, they wanted to be classified as an independent contractor. The employees and even the employers don't get to determine that. It's determined by the rules. But the PRO Act and the AB5 in California just really tightens that up quite a bit. And it's, I mean, obviously the intention is around getting rid of that independent contractor status where they can. And so whereas the current test on a national basis is, I don't want to say it's vague, but it has a lot more pieces to it. And so people are able to make arguments in a whole lot different ways, whereas the new AB5 has a much more concise, here's how you determine it, and it's going to be more and more difficult to argue out of that. As you said, though, AB5 in particular is it's kind of like the PPP of labor
Labor law.
laws. Yeah, exactly. That they've passed it, then they've amended it. Well, they didn't technically amend it. They added a new law that changed parts of it, and then they've got another new law that's changing other parts of it. So it is a chameleon, just like PPP, and we're not really sure where it's going to end up yet because of all that. So bottom line is, it's changes are coming, right? And we know that, and especially when, again, as I said earlier, when California does something, other states start to do it as well. And then on a federal level, we look to make a change there. And that PRO Act is right in line with that. And so there's definitely going to be a more union friendly, employee rights friendly environment, at least for a little while here. And we're going to see how that all affects, each of us as additional laws kind of come out of that whole environment. So.
Yeah. And so I would say, if you're a business that, really does rely on independent contractors to kind of, fill out a lot of your day-to-day activities, or, you are in an industry that does tend to lend itself towards organized workers, this is definitely one that you have to keep an eye on, because it could have a big impact on your bottom line if you have to bring in those 1099s as actual employees.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that could have a big impact on you. The next one is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Can I pop in? No, I just want to pop in the second bullet point there. I don't want to make any clients panic on the second point. This really does have to do with union workers. So a lot of times I get questions about, this is a work state. I can fire somebody whenever I want, right? I don't need a reason. And that really refers to the concept of employment at will, which means, yes, you can, as long as it's not for an illegal reason, you can terminate someone at any time for any or no reason. But a lot of people think of the term right to work, and that is specifically for union work. Whereas, so employment at will is not going away. That is in most states in the country, and that's not changing with this. So just wanted to kind of point that out in case anyone's conflating the two.
Yeah, you and I should have had that conversation a while ago, because actually Jason and I had that conversation yesterday. But I totally was mixing those up. I'm like, oh no, you can no longer fire anybody. No, that's at will.
No, you can fire me tomorrow. I'm good.
Yep. Yeah. That's not going to happen.
Don't get too excited about that. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So the next one is the Moving Forward Act. And again, this is one that was passed by the House, was not picked up by the Senate. But this was the first attempt at a comprehensive infrastructure bill. And, I think there is, there's President Trump, under that administration, passing this infrastructure bill was one of the centerpieces of what he originally ran on, was not able to get it done. Funny enough, that's also one of the big things that President-elect Biden ran on. And this is, this particular Moving Forward Act is more in line with what he was proposing. It definitely focuses, I would say, equally on expansion of clean energy, as well as kind of roads and bridges. But I think the reason why we're putting in this in here is that this has been something that's been talked about now for well over 5 years, of getting a big infrastructure bill, a comprehensive infrastructure bill in place. But what that total dollar amount is and what that includes, I don't know that we have a good grasp of that yet. So, and honestly, with all of this, this is probably one of those of, hey, we just want to let you know that this is something that could be coming down. If you are interested in public works or, coming out of, COVID and, you know, there is some ability for you, or if you've taken a hit on private jobs and you need to expand to just get more jobs, you know, this is something that could be a potential lifeline for you. I'm not sure, Jason, do we have, you know, if there's really anything kind of tactical or practical out, you know, coming out of this one, other than just kind of keep your eye on it?
Yeah, no, not yet. I mean, it's still, like you said, I mean, it's been out there for 5 years, essentially, you know, something, and nothing's happened yet. And, you know, it's going to probably become a bigger piece under the new administration. But until it actually kind of forms and we see it, don't really know if it has play for anybody outside of like prevailing wage and you know, those kind of clients that are doing work for government, or if there's going to be something for other types of businesses in there as well. You got the zero emissions and the transit technology aspect of it in there in that one bullet. So there could always be something that kind of filters to a larger group, but again, at this point, we just don't know.
Yep. Cool. So moving on, so we, you know, federal minimum wages and minimum wages at the state level, as well as paid leaves. Andrea, I mean, everything looks like, you know, the push, you know, several years ago was, you know, what is you know, a livable minimum wage. It looks like that is really pushing towards $15 an hour going across the country.
Yeah, and this is another one that's, you know, really kind of started out of California. Employers in that state are really familiar with, you know, the state minimum wage there with kind of incremental increases year over year, but then municipalities adding their own. So I had the pleasure of updating our database with all of the minimum wage updates, and off the top of my head, there's probably 40 cities in California that have their own minimum wage that is higher than the state. And those are all either already at $15 an hour or on their way. And the ones that were at 15 now do incremental cost of living increases each year. So it's really fun to update those, and they do them all different times of year. So depending on where you're at, you may need to keep an eye on it, because some of them happen July 1st, some of them happen third quarter. We do have a tool for that. If you're ever curious, you can go into Viper, into reports, and then there was a report in the A tab, minimum wage by jurisdiction. And if you just put in the effective date of what you're looking for, so you can put in today's date, or you can put in January 1st, and it'll have a list of all of those. So that can be helpful for you, especially, you know, like, let's say you are working in California, employees working in a variety of cities and they're minimum wage earners, you may need to pay attention to that. It's definitely where we're heading. You know, obviously there's talk of them increasing it at the federal level. The federal minimum wage is much lower than what we're seeing in other states. But obviously, you know, California started the trend, and it'll keep spreading until it hits the federal level.
And that's kind of the same thing with the paid leave, right? So, you know, FMLA was, you know, it just kind of reserved that job, but there really wasn't any, you know, paid aspect to it. But again, you know, that was kind of started in, I think it was California and New Jersey, if I remember correct. But they're also talking about that at the federal level now.
Yeah. Right now, for large employers, you've got, you know, Medical Leave Act for 12 weeks of protected but unpaid leave. So there's definitely a desire there to make that paid. Of course, funding for that and who pays for that is a big question. And then universal paid sick days. So there's already a requirement for federal contractors to provide paid sick days, 56 hours a year. That's also something that started in California. So California was the first state to require paid sick leave way back in 2004. And that one actually took almost 10 years before anybody else kind of joined in. But then it's quickly, especially the last 5 years, every year there's a couple more states that add to that. So yeah, there's definitely that it will be coming.
Awesome. So just real quick, for the minimum wages in the report, where can our clients find that information as far as what the current minimum wages are?
Yep. If you go to the reporting tab and then the HR folder within that, and it is called minimum wage by jurisdiction.
Awesome.
And you just literally put in the date, so whatever date you're trying to find out for, and then all of they'll all pop up for you.
Very
Or you
cool.
could use the search bar at the top.
Yep. Yeah. You always, and that's my favorite function too. Just a note for our clients for reports. Yeah. We have so many. I always go ahead and type in that search just what you think you might be looking for. I'll mention a couple other reports on some things that we're talking about. If you don't know where it is, just put on search. And then if there's a report that you are using often, make sure you star that, and that'll come up as your favorites. So those are the ones you go back to over and over again. That way they kind of float up for you and are easily accessible.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Very cool. Very cool. All right. So moving on here. So moving on, so into some of the different laws that are coming across the state. Again, some different labor law changes. We kind of talked about minimum wages and some of the paid sick leaves, but this seems to be that trend again that that is kind of taking place not only at the federal level, but in various states as well.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we already touched on the minimum wage. Florida, kind of a new one this year in that they've started this, annual increase. So that's kind of new for them, but most other states have kind of already been doing that. Yeah, so that is very typical. You can see there are 25 increases in states for the minimum wage increases this year, and that's just the state. And as I mentioned, then you also have cities. And then in some states, it's also by county. So just kind of depending on the area, it could also be countywide. And then paid sick leave, we talked about. And then paid family leave is one that's really been gaining a lot of traction in the last couple of years. The nice thing with the paid family leave, these are state funded or state programs. So they're paid for by of course, but there's usually a couple years notice of that. So for example, Colorado just passed one that won't actually be available for benefits for employees until 2024. So it's basically there's time to prepare for it. Then typically taxes start coming from the employer as well as the employee about a year or year and a half prior to benefits being available so that those get funded. So again, California started theirs in 2004. I think after that it was New York 2018, New Jersey 2019, State of Washington, District of Washington D.C. And then after that they just kind of kept rolling in, and now we've got Oregon coming online in a couple of years, as well as Connecticut, and then Colorado. And this kind of goes along with some of those states that also have state disability plans. So California's had one for a long time. And the other states that currently have those are Hawaii, New Jersey, New York, and Rhode Island. And again, these are state funded plans. So these are not ones that the employer is having to may necessarily set up a plan and manage a plan, but that you're funding as part of payroll taxes.
Gotcha.
And then the other trend that we're seeing also on one, we're kind of used to paid sick leave now, especially California and Arizona. Like, okay, we have to give paid sick leave. We understand that. And, but there is a move lately. The states that have been adding them are calling them either required safe time. So they're for a variety of reasons, or just flat out paid time off. So for example, in Maine, and then there's a county in Mexico and Nevada, they're just requiring paid time off for any reason. And typically it's anywhere from 40 hours to 56, maybe 72 hours a year. But that's kind of the trend we're seeing now with paid sick leave, is like they'll just give them time off to use for anything they want to.
Interesting. Cool. Okay, so I'm gonna probably move along a little bit faster. I know a lot of the stuff we kind of will touch on later, but in the California stuff, so we can probably move on a little bit. But marijuana legalization, I mean, this is kind of a hot and heavy topic, especially here in Arizona. But also with the House of Representatives at the federal level, voting for the first time to decriminalize marijuana. I mean, this is definitely more than a trend right now.
Yeah, there's now, I think, about 23 states where it's fully legal for any reason. So recently now, just this year, so we have Arizona, Montana, New Jersey, those you can see there, some of the other states. And then, of course, obviously, Oregon, super fun. So if anyone needs a fun place to go vacation next, I guess head to Oregon. Interestingly enough, though, it is very different by. So for employers, you really have to. So, I could do an entire webinar just on this topic, and it's probably something we'll look at in the spring. But employers in those states where it is legal recreationally, you kind of have to see what's going to be your stance on it. In Arizona, employers, you can still enforce a drug-free workplace. It's written into that law, but the question is, you want to. So there's definitely some things to consider there. And then there's some differences. In states, you can still test for pre-employment for marijuana. You just maybe can't do anything about it. In states, you can't test for it at all. So it's very state specific, again, because this patchwork of laws passed state by state.
Okay, that's a great idea for another webinar. So thanks for filling out my schedule for me. I appreciate that. So
you always love volunteers, don't you, Nate?
That's right. I love volunteers. So let's get into California. Again, a lot of this, if you're not in California, you're like, oh, why do I need to do this? And you kind of heard us talk about some of the other trends that we're seeing across the country. Is that a lot of ideas, a lot of regulations tend to get their start here, and so if you can understand what's happening there and just understand that what kind of an impact this potentially could have, 3, 4, 5 years down the road for you. But to get started, so prevailing wage, we'll talk about this. This one really kind of it expands the definition of what is an actual public works. And so, there was a lot of times where, depending on where that funding came from, we've had some clients of ours that worked on a hotel, and they found out like halfway through that contract that this was actually a prevailing wage job, because some part of that was funded through some type of a city grant, and so then they had to go back and redo all of those payrolls for those previous payrolls to make sure that they were in compliance for prevailing wage. So, this one was, again, another expansion of what is actually considered prevailing wage. Moving on from that one, so COVID, California expanded some of their COVID. Andrea, I mean, what are some of the kind of the big takeaways from some of this expansion here?
Yeah, that's a big one. I'm going to spend probably the most amount of time on this one and slide because I think it's really impacting day to day for a lot of employers. So the first one, the exposure notification, and this is basically if you have an employee who tests positive, and so you have those potential exposures on the work site within 1 day, there's disclosures that you need to give to your employees as well as any subcontractor's employee to the union if you're in a union environment. So that's a pretty quick response. So you're supposed to disclose to them regarding their COVID-related benefits, such as work comp. I'm going to touch on that in a second here. That's I believe, and as well, in California, you've got the state, so there's a lot of different things that need to be provided to them. also need to notify your local public health agency in the event of an outbreak. And they've defined an outbreak as if you have 4 employees positive at the same work site, or if you're over 100 employees, it's 4%. So basically, just remember 4. So in a you need to notify the public health agency. And then closely related to that is then workers' comp.
Andrea, just real quick, sorry about that. You kind of broke out there a little bit. So
Okay.
with that, the definition of an outbreak is those four workers, is that over a specific time period, or is it just kind of like the history of when you start looking at this?
It's within a specific time frame. I want to say it's like within 2 weeks prior to the last one. Cal OSHA did a pretty good job of, an entire page that has, FAQs for it. And actually they even have like a model COVID prevention program available, so employers can just put in their specific information so they can follow that template to notify. But yeah, so 4% for an outbreak. And I don't have it right up in front of me, but they have that specific definition of what that time frame is. But it's not like if you've had 4 over the last 8 months, that's not an outbreak.
Gotcha. Cool.
Closely related to that is the workers' coverage. There's a previous executive order that basically created a presumption of workers' compensation liability, saying, if it's, that it is work and it is a compensable workers' comp claim. What this one does is it kind of more closely defines what that is. So it's a double presumption. So basically there is a presumption that it's work related if an employee tests positive within 14 days of an outbreak. So you kind of have, one, is there an outbreak? Did the employee test positive within 14 days? So then it's, presumed to be work related. Or it's disputable and you provide evidence to your such as measures you have in place to reduce the transmission, the spread in the workplace, if where employees not related. So what are they outside of the place? Any employee statements or any way that you would normally, try to work claim. So it's not that an automatic workers' comp claim. They're going to assume unless you prove otherwise. Also with this, and these are hard too, they really kind of overlap, but whenever you have a positive, you are required to report that to your work. So working closely, with your workers' comp carriers, and they'll all have their own reporting mechanisms for that. And it's important on, if there is no outbreak, then there is no presumption of the work relatedness. So this really, the workers' comp piece of it is when there's a positive during an outbreak. And then lastly, the supplemental COVID sick leave. This really applies to those large employers that were left off of the paid FFCRA leave. So, our clients are, under 500 employees, you're already covered. You have to provide the FFCRA paid leave. This it's kind of catching those to federally, and the state requires them to also provide paid sick leave.
Gotcha. Andrea, you're kind of cutting in and out again a little bit. Yeah. So, if we can, we can try to get through one more page, and I think I can kind of cover the rest of it. But from the expansion of the CFRA, this really drives down and tries to capture more companies. Is that really the basis of kind of that expansion?
Exactly. So previous employers with 50 more employees, now if you have just 5 employees, you will be required to provide up to 12 weeks of unpaid job protected leave for employees who are eligible, which is 1 year of service, and they've worked 1,250 hours in the last year for certain reasons, and that birth, adoption, father, your own serious health condition or that of a family member. So for small employers that have not had to worry about the CFRA or at the federal level, FMLA, you now, will need to, and then for employers that were already covered by a CFRA, there's some changes to it. Also now cover carry leave, which is when you have called up to active duty. It changes the definition of some family members. And also changes the, they used to and under FMLA, if you have two, like a couple that have a baby, they both work for you, you could restrict their leave to a total of 12 weeks for them combined. And under the FMLA, that's still the same. Now under CFRA, both parents have the right to 12 weeks each. So again, so this is huge. To me, this is a really big change for small businesses and something that's going to, you have a 10, 15 company, someone's going to be out for 12 weeks. That's a big strain on the company, as well as all then the reporting requirements and we'll have those things available, written policies, forms, those kinds of things for our clients.
So Andrea, one thing that I'd like to ask you to confirm for us or expand on is it's about the number of employees. It's not about where the employer is based, right? So if you're an Arizona employer and you have 7 employees in California, but you have 50 people here or 30 people here, does this apply?
Yeah. So let's say you have 45 employees together, but you have 7 in California, they're going to be eligible for the CFRA leave.
Interesting. So when does this come into effect? Is this a January 1st effective date?
Yes, it is.
Yep. So when, I guess, as far as like any updates or anything that they need to do, when would you recommend, like, is this something that they have to have on day one, or if they can if they have to make adjustments, they can make adjustments, in the first quarter? What does that look like, or what's kind of our game plan on that?
You need written policy as soon as possible. I literally just got written policies from my sources, I think on Tuesday. So, I mean, they've not really been available for that. And then, but if you have somebody January 2nd and comes to you and says they need to take 12 weeks off, you're going to need to have, forms available for them. So, and that's something, typically they will put out kind of template forms that you can use. And I anticipate getting those within the next couple of weeks and having those available.
Right, and those are also underneath the reports tab in Viper, so kind of that same area.
That's generally we've provided upon request. We don't typically have an area just for forms. We've kind of gone back and forth on that. So for now, if anybody needs some, probably what I will be doing is doing and probably email to all of our clients that have employees in California with the information, with the forms, and providing that. But if you feel, if you want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me directly or hr@tagpay.com.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you. So KinderCare leave, this one is kind of what it means, right? Is that they can, but I guess the question that I had with this one is, they don't necessarily, I guess the big point here is that they don't have to necessarily prove that they're sick in order to use this. They just need to be able to, demonstrate that they're taking care of their family or for family reasons.
This one is actually an odd one. It's more of a clarification of a technicality. It just means that an employee they have the right to designate their use of time off as kin care or not. And basically, it clarifies that they have the right to do that to avoid a designation error and an unintentional drawdown of their kin care time. So this is going to be all form, maybe not in California, but employers in California, under the law, they can use up to half of their allowable sick time to take care of someone, kin, to take care of family. And so really this, like I said, it's just kind of clarifying a technicality and saying employee can say, no, I'm not using, yeah, I'm sick, I'm doing this, but I'm not using my kin care time. So
Gotcha.
I don't think it's going to apply to most employers. I think it's going to be a moot point.
Okay. So moving on here then, so we'll talk about CalSavers. So this is the mandatory retirement program. This is one that's been out there and has been incrementally implemented. So this year, the big one is, and for those of you that aren't familiar with this, this is the California Pension Fund that is designated for California state employees, but they've expanded it and opened up that program for private businesses to participate in. And this particular program basically mandates some type of retirement program for companies. And previous to this, it was, I believe, companies with more than 500 employees. Then it was last year, it was businesses with more than 100 employees. And this year, it's 50 plus employees, and next year it's 5 plus employees. And so, Jason, just correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe that if to fulfill this requirement is you have to have a retirement plan available for your employees, but they don't necessarily have to participate in it. There just has to have that offer of it in place.
That is correct. Yeah. And so, we were talking earlier about tactical. So for folks, if you don't already have a 401k, because you can put a 401k in place and that satisfies the requirement. If you don't already have a 401k in place, for ASO clients, we provide a 401ks. It's part of your package. You're essentially paying for it one way or the other. If you're not already utilizing it, definitely recommend utilizing it. If you have one that's through a third party, and you're paying for, you could, move over to ours and save some money there. But yes, 401k works. All of your employees don't have to actually sign up for it, but you have to make it available to them. And I can't remember, Nate, do we have some of the stuff in here about potentially auto enrollment for 401ks and stuff like that? Do we have anything in here about that?
We don't, but that's really what the CalSavers program is so that when you, if you choose to go with the state of California, that is an actual auto enrollment piece. And right now it's set up as a Roth IRA. So it is an after tax, and it's an automatic 5% after tax that gets deposited into that employee's account. So, this is one where, the intent of the law is obviously to help, more employees save retirement save for retirement. But, it also, if you sign up for kind of this state program, it does eliminate a lot of that choice of the employees on, what's best for their own individual financial situation. And so, there's pros and cons, and I'd say, each company and each business owner, you really need to look at, what you want to provide for your, you're going to have to do something. That's just the regulation. That's just the law. So, it's spend a little time to think about what's best for you and your employees.
Well, yeah, and with a 401k, you can design more what you're trying to accomplish. So absolutely, you have a lot more control over it, and not just for the employee's benefit, although that is certainly part of it. But as an employer, you can design matches or other things that allow you to be able to participate in the fullest or whatever as well. So again, there's reasons to potentially do it beyond just the legality of, yeah, we got to do something, whether it's CalSavers or our own program, but by having a 401k, you have a lot more control. So definitely look at that option. If, again, you're a client of ours, this is out to our clients, if you're not already utilizing it, just give us a call. We'll get you connected with Kevin and get everything set up. And for anybody that was on the webinar a couple of weeks ago, we've got a new platform where everything for the 401k is integrated right into Viper. So you don't ever have to leave the system. Employees can sign up, they can make changes, they can look at their balances. It's fantastic. And this is, just another reason to leverage that program that's out there for you. So. And going back to California is always the forefront. We will likely see this kind of stuff start rolling out throughout the country as well.
Yeah. Yep. So just to kind of move on, this is, the next couple slides are more of kind of like, hey, here's what's on the horizon. Some of these are kind of like no duh common sense, like the no hire resettlement agreement.
I love this. We got to have a law for this. Yeah.
I love this one because, it's basically, you can't write into any settlement agreement that, we're not going to rehire you. Doesn't mean that you have to rehire them. It's just,
I don't have to rehire you, but I can't write it in the agreement.
You just can't write it down. As well as, the Dynamex exemptions. So those are, expanding the list of that California AB5. We spent a lot of time on that earlier, but I think that the key thing out of this, and I think on the, well, no, it's not on the next one, but it's really about, even if, that PRO Act on the federal level, whatever that ends up being, if it ever does get passed, this law is constantly being changed. The Dynamex, or the California AB5 was implemented. It was passed in 2018, implemented in 2019. And I think it's been changed 5 times in the last 18 months or so. So this is constantly being like in a constant evolving regulation.
So PPP still beats it, but it's right up there.
So again, just some things that we're, very few of our clients have unionized security officers or anything like that. But this to me was one where you see kind of the government reach into really designating, what is a workday, and kind of, really regulating kind of really down into the minutia.
Yeah, because this gets all the way down to not just the rest break itself, but specifically unionized security officers. So, I mean, it's a specific job or specific position that they're mandating this on, which is just amazing that they get into that level. So.
Yep. The pay data collection and reporting, again, this is, really, making sure that that you're meeting minimum wage requirements, that those types of things. And so it's kind of adding some of that additional burden onto employers that have more than 100 employees, that you have to submit your pay data, to a government to review.
And I'll chime in here. So this will also impact federal contractors with 50 or more employees, with over 50,000 in government contracts. So basically, anybody that was required to file the EEO-1 report annually, you're going to be required to file in California. And essentially what this is the EEO got away from, they asked for pay data information along with what they've previously requested. Then they said, it was too much work for the businesses, too much work for us. We're not going to request more. So California came back and said, no, wait, we still want that. And so it's almost the exact same thing. that was required for that component 2 pay data for EEO1 reporting, and now it's going to go to the state. And that will be required for those employers by March 31st of this year. And we do have a report in Viper for that as well.
Awesome. So tiered minimum wage increase, I think we talked about this quite a bit. So we still have, we have that report within Viper that allows you to see all of these, all of these updates and wage tiers. And Andrea, I guess I do have, like, you're constantly looking at this, right? So anytime that there's any kind of a notification, we're updating that into Viper. So that really is, as to the best of our ability, that's the most up to date that as far as local jurisdictions and the minimum wage.
Exactly. I get notifications whenever there is one, but I also go through quarterly and do a double check just to make sure they're all there. And a lot of these cities and states have put them out, several years, what's happening. So whenever I have that information, we put that in for future years as well, and make those updates. So if anyone ever sees that there's one that's wrong, just email me, but I think I got it down now.
Awesome. So kind of our last one, and again, this goes back to the California AB 85. And so, the big fight in this has really been around, what is that classification of an independent contractor? The gig, I think initially this was really kind of to target that gig economy. So the Ubers, the Lyfts, the DoorDash drivers, and then they came around and they went directly to the people and passed a proposition to where now they're exempt from it. So it kind of took the legs out of the original intent, I think, of this. But again, to me, this is just another example that, this type of regulation is ever evolving. Again, we're still behind PPP, but but it's, this is not kind of one of those things that, where everybody agrees to this is what it should look like. It's definitely evolving.
And I have one more at the end of the slides, but I have 1 minute left, and this is nothing new, but this is a reminder for employers in California and any other employer that has even one employee in California. Your sexual harassment prevention training, they're due by January 1st. It doesn't mean the law goes into effect January 1st. Your employees are supposed to have gone through their training before January 1st. So it's all employees. Regular employees get 1 hour, supervisory employees have 2 hours. The good news is the Department of Fair Employment and Housing has free training available online. Simply have your employees go there, do their training, they can print out a certificate, and then you can save that in their Viper record as proof that they did that. So the great thing of being put out by the state, it fulfills all the requirements for the required training. And we do have that posted in our blog, the link to that, but it's on the DFEH website.
Awesome. So we'll make sure to kind of reiterate that after this as well, to kind of highlight that as well. And so we are right at our time. We're actually a little bit over our time. So apologize for that, but there was quite a bit of information. Just a couple things. So we do have a presentation that has all of this information, a lot of our discussion points in it, that's available to you as in kind of an ebook format that you can download after this. Again, we will send out this presentation as well as the webinar recording, so that if you do have any questions, you're like, I wonder, where was that, or what does, how does this really impact me? You can always go back and have that. We post that out to our resource page on both tagpay.com and ebacon.com, depending on which your preference is. But we also have many resources within Viper that we try to make this available to you. So again, I really want to thank everybody. Andrea, Jason, thank you, outstanding job. I really appreciate everybody's time. And if you do have any questions about this, please feel free to email hr@tagpay.com, and one of our team members here, if not Andrea herself, will get back to you and help you out with any questions that you have.
I'm so glad it was her this time and not me.
I know. How about that?
Gotta share the
I think the
love.
last 4 have been me.
So thank you very much, everybody. We appreciate your time.